Antoine Charles Louis de Lasalle was born on May the 10th, 1775, in Metz, a city steeped in military tradition. His family was of minor nobility, yet proud of its lineage. His mother, Suzanne Dupuy de la Gaule, traced descent from Marshal Abraham de Fabre-Etoile, of France's most celebrated 17th century commanders. From his earliest years, Antoine breathed the air of discipline, service, and honor. Lasalle received a Jesuit education, typical for boys of noble background. He was not a scholarly child. Discipline often clashed with his fiery temperament, but he excelled in physical training, horsemanship, and fencing. Metz, being a garrison town, offered young Lasalle daily spectacles of soldiers drilling, cavalry horses parading, and officers in resplendent uniforms. He idolized them. While other boys dreamed of law or clergy, Antoine dreamed of sabers and drums. At only 11 years old, Lasalle entered the army as a sous-lieutenant in the Alsace Infantry Regiment, June 1786. Though shocking by today's standards, it was not unusual for noble sons to hold commissions while still children. In truth, such appointments were honorary. The boy was far too young to lead men. But Lasalle embraced it fully. He drilled with the regiment, learned the rudiments of command, and absorbed military culture like a sponge. The outbreak of the French Revolution in 1789 changed everything. For the nobility, it was a storm that shattered centuries of privilege. The army, once the preserve of aristocrats, was democratized. Commissions held by noble children were revoked. Lasalle, 14, found himself stripped of rank. He was reduced to the status of a commoner, humiliated but not broken. Instead of abandoning the profession of arms, he did the unthinkable for a noble. He enlisted as a private soldier. In Paris, he joined the National Guard, specifically the militant section des Piques, one of the most radical revolutionary units. Lasalle's charisma and daring were impossible to ignore. By 1793, he volunteered for the Army of the North, serving in the 23rd Horse Chasseurs Regiment. Even as a common soldier, he impressed superiors with his horsemanship and courage in skirmishes against Austrian and Dutch forces. His fortunes soon revived. By 1795, thanks to a combination of family influence, merit, and revolutionary need for capable officers, he was reinstated as an officer, this time on his own merits, not by birth. He became a aide-de-camp to General Kellerman, and before the year ended, a captain. General Kellerman once said of Lasalle, "Lasalle was reckless, impetuous, sometimes insubordinate, but he had a fire that could not be taught. He was a natural leader of cavalry, born to ride at the head of a charge." By his early 20s, Lasalle was already marked by the traits that would define him: audacity never, fearing risk, charisma winning the devotion of men, resilience surviving disgrace, and clawing his way back. He was also known for gambling, dueling, and womanizing, the classic hallmarks of a young hussar. Yet, these excesses were always overshadowed by his battlefield brilliance. One comrade officer wrote in memoir, "Lasalle would wager away his last franc, then ride into battle as if the world itself were a game of chance. And somehow, he always won." Thus, by the mid-1790s, Antoine Charles Louis de Lasalle had been a boy officer, a common private, and once more, an officer rising fast in the revolutionary armies. He had seen fortune taken and restored, endured humiliation, and emerged stronger. The stage was set. France was at war with Europe. And Lasalle, the fiery young hussar, was about to begin the career that would make his name immortal. When Napoleon Bonaparte launched his first Italian campaign in 1796, the young Lasalle was among the cavalry officers eager to prove themselves. Italy became the proving ground of countless future marshals, and for Lasalle, it was where legend took root. At the Battle of Rivoli in January 1797, the Austrians launched a major counter-offensive to retake northern Italy. Napoleon's outnumbered French army held high ground overlooking the valley of the Adige River. The situation was tense. Austrian columns pressed hard, threatening to collapse the French line. Lasalle commanded just 26 chasseurs à cheval, far too few for pitched battle. Yet, seeing the Austrian infantry hesitating, he ordered a direct charge downhill into the enemy's flank. The maneuver caused chaos. Enemy soldiers, mistaking Lasalle's handful of horsemen for an entire cavalry regiment, began to break formation. Panic spread like wildfire. In the confusion, Lasalle seized 5 regimental flags of feet, unheard of for such a small force. "I saw him at Rivoli," recalled one soldier. A saber in one hand, reins in the other, shouting to his men as if he commanded 1,000. When the Austrians fled, it seemed as if they ran from Lasalle himself, not from 26 horsemen. Exhausted, Lasalle collapsed atop the captured standards. Napoleon, amused and impressed, is said to have remarked, "Go sleep upon your flags. Lasalle've earned them." This moment defined him. Bold, reckless, yet impossibly effective. From then on, comrades whispered that Lasalle's name alone could send enemies running. Napoleon's ambition soon turned toward Egypt, where he sought to strike at British influence and open a gateway to the east. For such a daring venture, he brought with him officers of extraordinary courage, and Lasalle was chosen among them. At the Battle of the Pyramids in July 1798, Lasalle and just 60 cavalrymen performed a daring maneuver. Instead of confronting the enemy head-on, he discovered a hidden path that cut across the desert, outflanking the defenders at Bay. This maneuver trapped the enemy between Lasalle's sabers and Napoleon's advancing infantry squares. The Mamluks, feigned horsemen of the desert, were routed. Lasalle's audacity earned him promotion to lieutenant colonel, marking him as one of Napoleon's trusted cavalry leaders. But Egypt was also hardship, blistering heat, supply shortages, disease. Lasalle's flamboyant spirit kept morale alive. Soldiers remembered him as a man who laughed in the face of adversity, urging men forward with the words, "A hussar must be ready for death at any moment, so let us live as if every day were our last," one hussar later said. He rode among us under the burning sun. Where others wilted, Lasalle urged his horse forward, eyes flashing. He seemed to thrive where mortals failed. When Napoleon abandoned the army and returned to France, Lasalle stayed behind to fight under General Kleber. His loyalty to comrades refusing to desert them made him admired as much for his character as for his sword. If Italy made his reputation and Egypt proved his loyalty, then Prussia was where Lasalle's ferocity became legendary. By 1806, Napoleon faced a coalition of Prussia and Russia. The Prussian army, proud but outdated, underestimated the French. Lasalle, now commanding a brigade of hussars, was unleashed on the enemy's rear. His unit and the terrifying name, Brigade Infernale, the Hellish Brigade. At the Battle of Jena Auerstedt in October 1806, Lasalle's light cavalry tore into Prussian lines. Entire enemy regiments crumbled before his charges. Napoleon himself noticed how Lasalle never hesitated to risk his life at the point of decision. But his most audacious feats came in the days after Jena. At Prentzlow on October the 28th, 1806, Lasalle, with barely 900 sabres, bluffed and harried 6,000 Prussians into surrender. Days later, at Stettin, he repeated the impossible, demanding the capitulation of a fortress garrisoned by 5,000 men, despite commanding fewer than 1,000 cavalry. The Prussian governor, demoralized and believing he faced overwhelming French forces, surrendered without a fight. Lasalle's bluff became a story of Napoleonic daring still studied in military academies today. One hussar later recalled, "He rode to the gates of Stettin as though he owned them. His uniform glittered, his saber raised. He demanded surrender with such conviction that even seasoned officers believed he commanded an army beyond the horizon. When the gates opened, we knew Lasalle had conquered with courage alone." By now, his fame was immense. Promoted to divisional general, he became not just a cavalry commander, but a symbol of French audacity. At the Battle of Heilsberg in June 1807, Lasalle famously saved Marshal Murat's life. Surrounded by Russian dragoons, Murat was in mortal peril until Lasalle charged headlong into the melee, cutting down enemy horsemen and freeing his commander. Murat later declared, "General, we are even. You have saved me as I once saved you." By 1808, Spain rose in revolt against French occupation. Lasalle was dispatched with the 1st Light Cavalry Division under Marshal Bessières to crush resistance in the north. Spain was different from the open plains of Prussia. Guerrilla bands lurked in the hills, civilians turned hostile, and villages erupted in rebellion. Lasalle, once seen as a romantic cavalier, earned a reputation for ruthless efficiency. He ordered the burning of the village of Torquemada and forced the ransoming of Palencia. His policy was brutal: punish rebellion with fire and steel. Yet he also showed flashes of chivalry, sparing towns that submitted quickly. At Cabezón in June 1808, he crushed Spanish forces under General Cuesta. Outnumbered, the Spanish made a stand on a narrow bridge. Lasalle charged across with cavalry, sweeping the defenders aside. The road to Burgos was open. Later, at Medellín, he captured several Spanish cannon and flags, proving once again his effectiveness in pitched battle. The Spaniards feared him, one French officer wrote. When word spread that Lasalle approached, entire villages scattered. He was the thunderbolt sudden, merciless, unstoppable. Spain revealed a darker side of Lasalle, the hard pragmatism of a soldier fighting a brutal war of resistance. Yet even here, his charisma never waned. His hussars adored him, for he shared their hardships and never asked of them what he would not do himself. Yeah. Through every campaign in Italy, Egypt, Prussia, Lassalle's loyalty to Napoleon never faltered. Napoleon recognized his recklessness but valued it. When courtiers asked why the emperor tolerated Lasalle's wild antics, he replied, "It takes only a pen stroke to make a prefect, but 20 years to make a Lasalle." This single remark reveals how indispensable Napoleon considered him. Outside the battlefield, Lasalle lived as fiercely as he fought. Oh. He was notorious for gambling, drinking, and dueling. Fellow officers joked he was half demon, half angel dangerous, yet charming. But marriage mellowed him. In December 1803, Lasalle wed Josephine d'Aiguillon, the divorced wife of General Berthier. With her, he found stability and love, becoming a devoted stepfather. His letters to her tender, affectionate show a softer side rarely glimpsed in the heat of war. A fellow officer once said, when he spoke of Napoleon, his eyes lit with fire. When he spoke of Josephine, they softened with warmth. He was a man torn between two loves, the emperor and his family. Yet in battle, Napoleon always came first. This duality reckless soldier, tender husband made him unique among Napoleon's generals. In May 1809, Napoleon faced the Austrians on the banks of the Danube. At Aspern-Essling, the French attempted to cross the river on fragile pontoon bridges. When the bridges broke under Austrian attack, Napoleon's army was trapped. Lasalle, commanding cavalry, played a crucial role in preventing disaster. His charges delayed Austrian advances long enough for French forces to withdraw in good order. Witnesses recalled how Lasalle seemed everywhere at once, rallying men, leading attacks, daring death with every saber stroke. Though the battle ended in French defeat, it demonstrated Lasalle's steadfastness under impossible conditions. 2 months later, Napoleon sought redemption at the Battle of Wagram, one of the largest battles of the Napoleonic Wars. Lasalle, commanding a cavalry division under Massena, spent much of the day impatient. His division was held in reserve, and the man who lived for the charge grew restless. Finally, near evening, he obtained permission to advance. Riding at the head of the first cuirassiers, Lasalle charged Austrian infantry. His attack scattered the first line, but as he pressed forward, a musket ball struck him in the chest. Moments later, another bullet pierced his skull. Lasalle fell instantly, his body carried back by loyal hussars. He was only 34 years old. "We saw him fall," one hussar recalled. "At first, we could not believe it. Less immortal, Lasalle struck down like any common soldier. Many swore vengeance, and we charged the enemy with tears in our eyes." Napoleon mourned the loss deeply. For the emperor, Lasalle was more than a general. He was the embodiment of what a cavalry should be. A comrade who embodied the very spirit of the Napoleonic Wars. Lasalle himself had once joked, "Any hussar who does not die by 30 is a blackguard." He lived 4 years past his own prophecy, but met the fate he had always embraced, death in the saddle, at the head of his men. Antoine Charles Louis de Nassau, Cavalier, General, husband. His name stands inscribed on the Arc de Triomphe, remembered not for politics or titles, but for reckless courage and undying loyalty to Napoleon. For soldiers of the Grand Armée, he was the thunderbolt of the charge. For his enemies, he was terror on horseback. Ooh. For us today, he remains the Hussar General, who lived on did as only a hussar could.